welcome. Catch us up on what's going on at Epsilon. What are the latest developments in the business?
A lot of things. So I think some of you may have seen a few months ago, we acquired a company called Lotame, right? And so I think to what Andy was saying earlier, something that Epsilon has done pretty well over the past 5+ years is really our truth set, our identity set. From a U.S. perspective, right? And the reason why Lotame was so critical for us was it was our ability to bring our version of identity to the rest of the world, right? Because for those of you who are in the data space, U.S. identity, while it's not easy to do, it's a little more federated, right? It's a little more available. Rest of the world, whether it's legislation, whether it's country-specific items, it's a little bit more difficult to get that going. So Lotame is really our EMEA, our APAC, our Latin America approach there to bring the Epsilon flavor into these different regions. So very exciting as far as just furthering the consistency of Epsilon globally now.
How do you determine that the Lotame data set is complementary? Is it just that geographic extension, or do they cover slightly different things?
They do cover slightly different things, right? So again, everything we think about is at the individual person level. So when we think about what a US individual may be looking for versus a UK individual, a Brazilian individual, a Singaporean individual, these are quite different things. Different heuristics, brands in all these different regions look for different things as well. So we do take a more bespoke approach when it comes to identity. It's not just a one-size-fits-all. And so we make sure that we kind of evaluate the data set. That was part of the due diligence, part of the M&A process, evaluating how identity is done by various companies, not just Lotame. And Lotame kind of fit that bill of the right augmentation of our identity in different regions.
So you're part of the Publicis group. And I think it's no great secret that Publicis has been on a bit of a tear lately, had a really good run. How has the Epsilon identity product and offering, the set of solutions, supported that growth?
Yeah, I think, again, from a press release perspective, we've talked about connected identity. Connected identity is kind of the two-word phrase that we use both internally at Publicis and Epsilon, but also externally with our clients. And when you think about connected identity, it's really the thread that you pull between all forms of marketing, whether it's paid, whether it's owned, whether it's earned marketing, but that identity and that individual is so important for brands and our customers and our clients to understand, right? Because it's not just what they do on Google search, it's not just what they do on programmatic display, it's not just what they do on loyalty and email, it's really how do you know that individual horizontally as well. So connected identity within Epsilon, that's really how we're powering a lot of the Publicis kind of wins and success, but it's really at that individual identity layer.
So putting you on the spot a little bit, would you argue that if an agency doesn't have its own identity spine, a product like the Epsilon product, it's disadvantaged in today's market? Does it mean you can do better, neater, cleverer, cooler things for your clients than an agency that doesn't have that kind of offering?
You are putting me on the spot. I would say the measurement part is something that's quite important, right? So it's one thing when you think about top funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel, and you think about different lexicons of identity, right? There's so many different forms of identity outside of ours, to your point. But for us, how we think we stitch it together is not just on the front end of how we address and find the individual, but also on the back end, how you measure it, right? And so I think for us, having that measurability at that individual level, we do think differentiates us. I can't speak for other people, but for us, I think we do talk about the front and the back end as well.
So this talk, this fireside, has a perfect harmony tag. What does that mean to you in the context of connected identity, connected media, and so on?
Yeah, one piece that we've really talked about from an Epsilon perspective is one view, one vision, one voice. And what we mean by that is if I talk about view, it's really talking to our clients about how if you're a financial services client, you might know a very, very deep depth of what your customers spend within that sector, right? So your credit worthiness, what purchase items you're doing, but you may not know all the time demographic, zip code. You also may not know what CPG items you're buying at the supermarket, right? Because everyone is very vertically deep, but not as breadth, right? And so for us, how we think about view that we provide the client is giving clients a much more holistic view of their customer set. So that's view. Voice or vision is now when you think about each of our consumer identities, right? So I just bought we were just talking about buying a TV, yes. Right? So I'm moving into a new house. I'm in the market for a 85-inch TV. So I'm hyper in market. An electronics retailer may want to give me a promotion for a discount. The minute I buy the TV, I'm not looking to buy another TV right away. My wife would kill me, right? But I might look at loyalty. I might look at a speaker system. I might look at a warranty, right? There's all these adjacencies. And so for us, when we talk about vision in that one view, one vision, one voice, it's our job from an identity perspective to allow the client to understand what message and what that customer journey looks like, whether you're hyper in market or you're just engaging or re-engaging with the brand. And last but not least, with voice, we talk about activation. Activation is all forms of media. It could be out of home, it could be programmatic, it could be social. So when you think about view and vision and voice, stitching that all together is really where the magic happens. It's the identity and knowing when and where and how to address the consumer at the right place.
I keep hearing the lyrics to Queen's One Vision as you're speaking. Also worth noting, you could buy a television, or else you could go and hit up our good friend Julian Zilberbrand from LG over there, who's literally given
He
them
did
away.
promise
He's
TVs.
promised.
TVs for everyone.
Yeah, TVs for everyone. Just hit him up. Chap over there. Let's talk then inevitably about AI.
Yes.
So how are you leveraging AI to support the Epsilon solution?
Great question. So I think a lot of the industry, the more consumer-facing AI, it's really generative AI, right? So I think for those of you who have played with ChatGPT, you make some funny pictures, send to your family and friends, and it's kind of cool that you can generate that. Look, admittedly for Epsilon, we're not really in the generative AI space, but we are in the predictive AI space, right? So that's another kind of adjacency of AI, and really it's really around how do you find and predict the right individual, again, around identity and the right message and the right context of when to find that person. So that's quite important for the work that we're doing from an AI perspective. And so when you think about Epsilon, you think about even the overall holding company that we belong to in Publicis, they may be using more generative AI on some of the campaign creation, some of the production creatives. We marry that up on the predictive piece to then serve that and deliver that. So it's a good marriage there.
So do you think AI is a democratizing tool? Does it make the same identity solutions available to small businesses just as they are to larger ones? Or does it fundamentally favor larger businesses?
I'm a big fan of how it democratizes it, right? So even when you think about, I think, AI data sets, labeling, right? There's news over the past week about OpenAI over in California and the CEO moving to Facebook. And I think a big piece of that was there is an arms race around democratizing data labeling, LLM models as well. And so I think from our perspective, even predictive AI and knowing the individual and identity, how do you democratize it for small businesses, medium businesses? It's still first-party data that they own and they operate. And so how do you then utilize AI? And it's really the ideas that make the most difference, right? I think now over the weekend as well, people are saying never in the world, and so I'm from Silicon Valley, so I think engineers make fun of people like me. I'm not an engineer, where we're the idea people, but we need engineers to build companies, right? Now I think in the next 10 years, 20 years with AI, the ideas people might actually rise because AI is helping us build things faster. Right? And so we may, for the first time in the industry, have a shortage of ideas, not engineers, shockingly. So I think it does democratize it for small and medium-sized businesses, especially if they have great ideas.
So clearly, if you walk the croisette, there's a lot of excitement about AI, but there's also some trepidation and anxiety. I suspect at least a third of the people here in the audience today won't have jobs 12 months from now. Joke.
That's very mean.
It's very mean. But what can you say to reassure people in the industry? Do you think AI can genuinely be a creator of employment opportunities, an equalizer, or is it going to do something different?
Yeah, 100%. So look, the way we look at AI at Epsilon, it's absolutely not a job destroyer. I think it's a shift and allocation of different duties, different tasks, right? So look, speaking from my team personally, we've got operations people, we've got account managers, we've got salespeople. There's parts of each one of those functions that are human-based, that are client relationship-based, that are not machine-based, right? And so no matter what AI does, it would at worst, maybe displace certain tasks that are mundane for individuals, humans, but then free them up to do things that are much more value creating. So I think our stance is really more of it's a function shift as opposed to a displacement of jobs.
Positive. Right, let's talk about the next 5 years. So what are your big picture expectations for the development of the market, for the advertising space? If we fast forwarded to 2030, what's going to look most different?
It's crazy to think that's 5 years from now only. But I think one thing we've seen in some of the panels before, I think the panel coming up next, it's very retail media, commerce media focused. And I think there's a reason for that. In the industry, I've been in the industry 25 years now. It's almost what's old is new, just like 90s fashion, right? And so, audience media, identity, data monetization, these are things that happened in the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, went out of vogue. They're now back in vogue with a different moniker. So I think commerce media, again, going back to small, medium-sized businesses, even enterprise businesses, it really democratizes that, and I think it's a displacement or a shift away from some of the walled gardens where they've had so much data, so much inertia and gravity. I do hope that retail media kind of democratizes even the ability for more people to kind of fragment or shift budgets away, and where it's not so concentrated to some of the few walled gardens.
So summing up then, putting it all together, what is your one big piece of advice for a marketeer trying to build more meaningful relationships with their customers? What should they really be leaning into today?
I think one thing we see with a lot of our clients, marketeers, is in the past 10 years, there's been a lot of, I think, Frankenstein tech stacks they've built, right? Whether it's in-house, whether it's partners, whether it's, you name it. I think one advice from marketeers would be really understand, I think, what the end objective is, what you're trying to get to, and frankly, and it's not just selfishly serving from my day job hat, I think it's figuring out which partner can get you the most consolidation as well, right? There's so much Frankensteining, there's so much identity definition that's different. When you start having 10 different partners within the flow, you can't actually make anything interoperable. I think to me, the future next 5 years is interoperability of any partner that a marketer would look at, because that's how you actually measure the efficacy better. Otherwise, you're looking at all these different signals, and there's no unification there.
Mike, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. That's fascinating stuff. See you here next year. I want to see how much of this has come to fruition.
Hopefully we'll have some TVs.
Hopefully we'll have some TVs. Brilliant. Thank you, Mike, from Epsilon.